In December, 18-year-old Israeli teenager Tal Mitnick became the first conscientious objector to be jailed since October 7th after refusing Israel's mandatory draft to join the Israeli army.
אני מאמין שטבח לא יכול לפתור טבח. ההתקפה הנפשעת בעזה לא תפתור את הטבח הנוראי שהחמאס עשה. אלימות לא תפתור אלימות, ולכן אני מסרב.
A military court sentenced Mitnick to 30 days in prison, and immediately after he was released, he was sentenced to another 30 days. Mitnick has described his actions as the bare minimum, but in a nation where military service is intertwined with nationalism, conscientious objectors who are a minority in Israel face a potentially very lonely journey. The so-called Israeli Defense Forces, or IDF, is the national military for the State of Israel, created in 1948, only 3 years after the Holocaust, which killed 6 million Jews. They are responsible for protecting a national home created for the Jewish people, a home envisioned by the 19th century Zionist movement.
When our new soldiers are sworn in, they pledge, if necessary, to sacrifice their lives for Israel.
In Israel, most citizens over the age of 18 have to serve in the Israeli army. Men are expected to serve a minimum of 32 months and women a minimum of 24 months. The majority of conscripts are Jewish. Some are Druze, an Arabic-speaking religious and ethnic minority. Some are Circassian, a Muslim minority who originated from the Black Sea region of the Caucasus. Both Druze and Circassians account for less than 2% of Israel's population. Israeli Arabs or Palestinians, married individuals, those who apply for exemption on religious grounds, and those who are mentally or medically unfit are exempt from compulsory military service. Like many prime ministers before him, Benjamin Netanyahu also served in the Israeli forces from 1967 to 1972.
It's very strong propaganda from a very young age, where we are being taught that being a soldier is an honor and it is something to be proud of. I mean, there are discounts for soldiers in stores, there is like everywhere. It's such at the heart of the society.
What is a conscientious objector? Conscientious objectors like Tal Mitnick and Sophia Or are people who refuse to participate in military activities to protect their integrity because of moral objections to the occupation. The Israeli military set up a Conscientious Objectors Committee in 1995. Exemptions are usually granted on religious grounds for ultra-Orthodox Haredi Jews studying in yeshiva colleges, for example. Israel's High Court of Justice has ruled that pacifism, the belief in non-violence, is a valid reason for exemption. Selective refusal, however, rejecting specific duties, is illegal and punishable by jail, and there is no policy that spells out how long this cycle might continue. The main method the army uses to release refusers is by declaring them mentally unfit for service, implying that in Israel, dissent is equated with insanity. This is what Israeli journalist and writer Eitan Netchin wrote in an opinion piece for The Guardian about his experience being sent to a military psychiatric board when he refused to serve. In the eyes of Israeli leaders and broader Israeli society, Israeli conscientious objectors are seen as a threat to national unity.
They are objectors without any conscience, and they are an embarrassment to the State of Israel and the Jewish people.
The more right-wing people, which is the majority of people, who call me a traitor, they call me a self-hating Jew, they threaten me with death or rape.
Ariel Sharon, the former Prime Minister of Israel who was notorious for his brutal militaristic campaigns against Palestinians, said conscientious objectors or refuseniks were responsible for encouraging terrorism.
We grew up, we were told many things that we found out that were lies. We were told that the IDF is the most moral army in the world, and we served there in combat units, and we discovered that it's not so true.
Every year, a handful of young Israelis risk being jailed because of their moral objections to serving in the Israeli forces. But in an increasingly repressive political climate, Israeli teenagers like Mitnick and Or are increasingly the exception to the rule.
I grew up knowing I was not going to enlist. Just because I grew up in a non-Zionist family where critical thinking and empathy were very strong values that I was taught from a very young age.
On top of this, anyone within Israel, from Israeli journalists, Jewish Israelis and Palestinians with Israeli citizenship, who are criticizing Israel's actions in Gaza, are also being cracked down on. But groups like Masarvot, an Israeli network that supports conscientious objectors, are stepping in to support Israeli refuseniks when no one else will. In February, Israeli teenager Sophia Or will most likely be jailed when she formally refuses to enlist in the Israeli forces on her conscription date.
Communicating to Israeli society, and especially to young people, to show them that refusing is an option, that refusing is something you can do, that peace is an option, that military service is a political choice. And if I manage to communicate that message, which is very hard in Israel, and especially now, because there has been a very strong shift to the right, then that is worth it.